You are watching part of our series of interviews with economist and best-selling author Dr. Pat Choate. Dr. Choate's newest work, Saving Capitalism, Keeping America Strong, points out not only the problems this country faces, but the solutions we must use to face them. Now, Pat, what makes you write a book like Saving Capitalism?
Our country is in great trouble at this point. Our economy is off dramatically. We find ourselves with massive trade deficits. We have been doubling up the national debt every 8 years. Our infrastructure is wearing out. So what I wanted to do in this book was to clarify the issues, explain it where the average person can understand it, where the voter who does own this country can know, and then to lay out some solutions. How do we work our way out of this mess? How do we put our people back to work? How do we balance our budgets? How do we bring jobs back to America? And that's the whole purpose of this book, is to show how to do it.
Now, the book outlines a lot of problems. Unfortunately, the book is about problems that need to be solved. When did this all start to snowball? When did the America that was once so strong begin to fall apart?
We really began to fall apart, I think, in the early 1980s. And at that point, what we did was we shifted from a national policy of tax and spend, pay as you go. Up until that point, the United States, if we wanted to do something, then we would tax ourselves to do it. And we shifted in the 1980s. We went to a borrow and spend policy. We took the idea that government was not the solution, that government was the problem. We deregulated the economy. We had free market absolutist gain control of the government, and they were not responsible. When Ronald Reagan took office as president, the national debt was a bit less than $1 trillion. When he left office, it was approaching $4 trillion. Bill Clinton went in, and he actually, his great accomplishment was to move back to a pay-as-you-go basis, and by the time he left, he was paying down the national deficit.
That was the famous speech when he said, within 25 years, there will be no more national debt.
There will be no more national debt, and we were on the path to do that. Interest rates went down, automobiles became less expensive, homes became less expensive. George W. Bush went back to the borrow and spend policies that had been used by his father and by Ronald Reagan. And so what we wound up with is the national debt went up from $5 trillion when he went into office to slightly more than $10.5 trillion when he left office. He doubled up. The other thing that he did in his administration, with the cooperation of a Democratic Congress, is they deregulated the financial system. And by deregulating the financial system, what was permitted is for the banks, the insurance companies, the other financial institutions to engage in gambling with the vast stock of money that they held. And as they got into more of these exotic gambles, they moved themselves to where they had what I call compensation looting. You were literally winding up with people finding out of ways to take 2% of pension funds, estate pension funds, or teachers' pension funds, just to manage the money, and then 20% of the profit. And then many got greedy and were taking 40 and 50% of the profits. They got into ever more exotic gambles, and ultimately in 2007 and 2008, it fell apart. We had a financial collapse. And unfortunately, Wall Street and the money industry was able to go to Congress and get this massive bailout. Now, I don't think that most people really understand that the public is being kept in the dark as to how most of this money is used. The Federal Reserve, for example, has loaned $2 trillion out to banks, to credit card companies, to housing, to mortgage and other activities, and they refuse to tell where the money is going.
For more news, notes, and topics, please tune in and log on every day at economyincrisis.org.